much as Bears fans might not want to admit it, Mel Tucker actually was kind of creative at times last year, especially when the Bears were in the nickel defense. And what we can use from that creativity now, projecting what the Bears could look like in a 3-4, Arthur, is seeing some of these guys in those positions on last year's Bears defense and how it translates to what could be Vic Fangio's defense. And again, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. There'll be a lot of different fronts. Bear with us, but we're going to see where guys like Shea McClellan, Ego Ferguson, Lamar Houston, how they could fit. And here's kind of your standard basic 4-3, your D-ends, your D-tackles, and everything. And our first slide goes all the way back to week 1. And Arthur, against the Bills, we saw this a couple times, how they used Shea McClellan as an outside rush backer.
Yeah, Shea, we've seen, has not really been able to set the edge as a defensive end. That obviously hasn't worked. He hasn't been great in too much space as a linebacker, but as Kevin said, what we saw early on in the season was Shea lining up off the edge with one clear intent, that's to come after the passer. In this slide that you're going to see, he's lining up off the right side of the offensive formation. I'd say the only difference really in what you're expecting from a traditional rush linebacker is I think typically it's going to come off the left side of the offensive formation. But again, it's going to limit the space that Shea has to play on. It's going to give him one clear objective, and it's what he was projected at by most coming out of college. So this is kind of a last opportunity for Shea to see if this is a natural spot for him.
And as many people are going to clamor for him to get cut again. You know, Shea McClellan's going to come cheap to the Bears, and they're going to want to see what they have in him being able to work in space. You know, the other slide showed you a little bit. You had Lamar Houston moving a little bit over, playing the 3 technique, and something that maybe he can do in this, but he's really maybe one of your most versatile players. If he's healthy, he could play 5 technique, 3 technique, even stand up like he did in Oakland. And you had Jeremiah Ratliff a little bit shaded over to the center, and we'll talk about that on another slide. And sticking with the idea of these ends, Arthur, we stick with the Bills game. And this next slide shows you Jared Allen, Will Young. Big question marks on how they're going to fit. Can these guys stand up? Allen has said he wants to be able to rush with his hand in the dirt. But here, you had Allen was essentially a wide 9 guy all the way outside. And Will Young was staying up until right before the snap at his normal spot in the 4-3. And you wonder if there's a way that Vic Fangio can continue to use these guys in his defense next year.
Well, we have to hope so, obviously. They look like a little bit of misfits. We really only see Jared Allen do one thing throughout his career. He has done it extremely well, don't get me wrong, but that is coming off the edge from a wide formation with his hand in the dirt. So is there going to be some flexibility? There's going to have to be. Again, I don't believe he has the athleticism to play in space as that typical outside linebacker. And then, as Kevin said, Willie Young, another big if, unfortunately, because of the late season Achilles injury, but has a little bit more length, at least, that you're looking for in the 3-4 defensive end package, but we'll just have to see.
And on this play, what was interesting was that Will Young actually dropped back. It was a zone blitz. You had Charles Tillman was rushing from the corner spot, and you know, you're going to need that versatility for Willie Young coming off the Achilles to show that you can play in what's going to be a different defense. This last slide talks about the inside, and some people, Arthur, will tell you that the zero technique, the spacing nose tackle, is the most important part of a 3-4 defense. And the Bears might have one in Jeremiah Ratliff, like we talked about in that first play. He was kind of near the center. Ego Ferguson, though, the young player, 2nd-round pick, you see in this slide against the Panthers, he's right there, right in this gap, very close to the center. And that's a spot that maybe he could find a way. Clearly, is a spot he played last year. Maybe that translates to the new defense.
Yeah, we've seen Fangio line him up in a zero technique like we showed you earlier. We've seen him tilt a little bit. We know Jeremiah Ratliff, has had a lot of success with that throughout his earlier career in Dallas. So again, the point here is to have options, to have some flexibility, and Ego Ferguson could be an interesting fit. He's a big guy, but has a little bit of movement. Not still necessarily your traditional 3-4 nose, but what we're learning is that Vic Fangio is not really looking for that traditional position. He wants guys who can both plug and get around as well.
And we'll talk about the inside linebackers a little bit in our next video, but in those nickel plays that we've looked at in this slide, we talk about how Mel Tucker used a lot of those inside linebackers blitzing right over the middle. And look, what we can all agree on, we're probably not going to see this next year. We're not going to see a lot of the 4-3, the standard look that the Bears have used for so many years. But we're going to see a lot of different fronts. We're going to look at guys like Christian Jones, John Bostic, McClellan, Jared Allen, and we're going to try to project how these guys might fit in a 3-4 defense in our next video.